in English, form name hyperbytes, and in this module we're going to be looking at redirecting back to a calling page post login. This is working in the Node environment only, as it requires the Node security restrict stage to be applied to your layout page. So sadly this won't work with PHP, and obviously because we're in Node we'll be using rooted parameters. I've pre-prepared a few pages here just to stop you having to watch me produce some fairly basic stuff. We'll start with, we have an index page, and all that has is an anchor button in which has a link security test.12/1234 rooted parameter, and you can see here we have our parameter of ID within the routing. We obviously have the security test page itself. Now that's linked to a layout page called secure layout. We've got a login page, standard login page, and that login, once if it's successful, sends us to a page called welcome. So that's a static page that it sends to, rather than sending it back to the page where you called the login. A welcome page just so we can see what's happening, and then we have obviously a login action and a logout action within. So login, which is a straightforward standard security login, and we have a logout which I'll be using occasionally just to force a logout when I'm working. So let's have a look and see what we've got at the moment. Well, the first thing is the secure layout is not secure, so we need to just secure that up at the moment. So I'm going to go into our workflows, I'm going to create an API action, and I'm going to call that secure it, for want of a better name. And all we're going to drop in at this stage is our security provider restrict from the security provider section, and we're just going to force it to go to login if the person isn't logged in appropriately. We need to attach that to the layout page to make sure that that's run at server level. So if we add secure it to there, that means that whenever the security test page, which is linked to that layout, runs, that server action will run automatically, and if there is, or if you're not logged in, you will be then diverted to the login page. I'm just going to quickly show you that. I'll just go straight into security test. I'm going to fire that up. You see there, it won't let me access it. I need to then log in. But when I log in, I get taken to that page called welcome. And that's really not what we want if ever you've gone through this sort of bad UX experience of a checkout where you fill in all your shipping details, etc., etc. You get to the end, it goes creating a, you have not created an account, click here to create an account, or click here to log in. So you log in or you create the account, and what you find is you end up at some generic welcome page. You need to go back into that checkout again and fill in all those shipping details. Really going to annoy the hell out of you. So at least you want to return to the correct page if possible. So that's what this tutorial is all about. So let's back into Wappler now. We can see the redirections are working. What we need to do now is just say, well, how do we make sure that it goes back to where we came from? And we actually do virtually all of that from that secure it server action. Back into our security restrict action. At the moment we're just diverting it to login. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into our $server, and I'm just going to put in URL here. You could use path info if you want. I prefer URL because it's less typing. And now in that security restrict, what we're going to do now is to redirect it to login, query, URL equals, and then we're going to just drop that URL in the end of it. And Don't you hate it when Wappler does that? We'll do that again. Query URL equals. Just going to copy the code for that, and I'm going to put the same thing in here. And save that. So now what we have is that when we divert to that login, we will also be passing a URL parameter which contains a URL of the page that has called it. Once we've done that, we need to be able to pick that up in the login page. So we're going to go into our main. We're going to define a query parameter, and we're going to pick up that parameter of URL in that. Let's save that, and then we can have a look and see how that works in the browser. Let's go into our index page. Let's just make sure that we're logged out by running that logout routine. So we're in our index page. We're going to launch that in our browser. We're going to click on the link. You'll see there now we have the login, but we have that URL parameter appended to that, and we have the required URL to divert to. Now this still isn't complete, but I like to just do things stage at a time, check everything works. That's probably me. Should have picked a shorter password. There we are. That's worked. The logins worked still, but of course we're still going back to that welcome page. So let's look at how we're going to resolve that. In Wappler, what we need to do now is make a small change to that login. So if we look at what we've got in there, we'll see that we were browsing to welcome. What we actually want to do now is to be able to browse to the redirect URL. But we also must remember that there is a possibility that a login page has been called directly, and therefore there is no URL specified to redirect to. So we need to also have a default to be able to deal with that. So I'm going to go into client-side binding, and we're going to pick URL. I'm just going to, probably easiest is to just code this by hand. So if query URL exists, we're going to go to the query URL. Otherwise, we're going to go to the welcome page. So if I test for the presence of the query URL parameter, if it exists, we'll redirect to there, and if it doesn't exist, then we will be redirected to the, in this case I think I'm going to make it just the root page, shall we say. Save that, and now hopefully we've got everything we need to be able to do what we intended to do. Back into our index page, let's fire that up. Let's click rooted link, asking for the login. Submit that. You see now that when you're logged in, we've been reverted back to the page that we actually wanted to be in the first place. So that's allowed us to return to the parameter. So that's what this tutorial is all about. Don't forget, it does require you to be using a node environment. You do have to be using the security provider, and this is done using rooted parameters. You can do it by tagging in the query string server action, or server variable I should say, after that URL up here. It's a little bit faffy, but it can be done. It's not a great problem, but that's beyond what we intend to do for this. So thanks for joining me, and I hope you will join me on the next video.